Hi, I'm Marty Nemko. Uh, Nobody likes to get preached to, but there's a few things that sometimes, even in retrospect, we wish we were preached to, and I want to share a few of those today. There is a tendency, especially among psychotherapists, to tell us that we need to process the bad things that happen in our lives, even all the way back to childhood, in order for us to move forward. But at least in the 5,300 clients who I've worked with, the career counseling and personal coaching clients, I've found that in general, more than a little bit of processing tends to make one more likely to be mired in the past than to move forward. This is not just an academic, or at least a reflection of my counseling clients, but it really was what helped my father and all of the other Holocaust survivors who I knew to move forward, and what has kept many of the Holocaust survivors who did not move forward mired in the past. So I'm going to briefly tell you his story. Now I'm going to make it really brief. My father owned a tiny little store in Brooklyn, the only store he could afford, and it was so small that people would, the kids on the weekends, would grab the merchandise that he had to have on folding tables in front of the store because there was no room in the store. And he'd just grab a whole box of sunglasses or shirts or whatever and run away. But my dad couldn't afford a security guard. So when I got marginally old enough, 13, it was me. And the most memorable moment of my life was one day when business was slow. I'm standing out in front of the store. My dad's there too. And there was a parking meter right in front, and I can still visualize it. My elbow was on one side of the parking meter. My dad was on the other, like a mirror image. And I asked him, I said, "Daddy, how come you so rarely talk about the Holocaust?" And he stiffened, which is something he rarely did. And he said, "Martin, the Nazis took 5 years from my life. I won't give them 1 minute more." He said, "Martin, never look back. Always take the next step forward." And indeed, I've had the privilege of having been a career coach to some of the most successful people on planet Earth and some real strugglers. And one of the differentiating features is that the successful ones, by and large, never look back. Always take the next step forward, even though crap has happened to them, although probably not crap as bad as being in the Holocaust. So my first preachy plea to you is never look back. Always take the next step forward, and don't even look sideward. So many people get mired into sadness because they compare themselves to their siblings or to their neighbors or whatever. You can compete only with yourself. You want to be better today than you were yesterday. Maybe even better this hour than the previous. When I work with a career counseling client, I delude myself into thinking I'm going to make this my best hour yet. And if I had a crappy hour, I'm going to simply I'm not comparing myself with anybody else. I'm saying I want to be one notch better myself. And that's helpful to me. So that's my first tip. Never look back, never look sideways, always take the next baby step forward. The next is a very contra the zeitgeist suggestion, which is to be elitist. We're told we should be very egalitarian, whether it be from a conservative noblesse oblige perspective, or simply, we really are all equal, and if things are unequal, it's a matter of racism, sexism, classism, capitalism, blah, blah, blah. And yet I'm going to encourage you, not so much from a societal perspective, but from an individual perspective, to be elitist in terms of who you hire. Really take the time to find a great person. Not only will that benefit you, it's really hard to have weak employees. Not only will it benefit your coworkers who are not saddled with a bad employee, not only will it benefit your customers, but it ultimately benefits society. When merit is the determining factor in terms of who gets hired, or who gets into graduate school or whatever, ultimately society is better and we feel like our efforts are rewarded and our abilities are rewarded. You can, in my judgment, you should be elitist also in terms of who you tend to pal around with at work. Look for those people who have integrity, who are smart, who are relatively easy to work with, and do what you can to spend more time with them. We're supposed to be non-judgmental. Everybody is all the same. Everybody's equal. That's everybody knows that's garbage. But we mouth those words like in the old fairy tale. The emperor has the emperor's new clothes. He had no clothes, but everybody was afraid to. All his courtiers were afraid to tell him. They said, "Oh yeah, beautiful clothes, beautiful clothes," and that's what we're doing today. We're saying, "Oh yeah, we're all equal, all equal, all equal." And then privately, of course, we're as judgmental as anything in terms of who we hang out with. So really, allow yourself to be judgmental, not of course in terms of race, gender, or sexual orientation, but in terms of quality people. Everybody deserves to be with people who are at least as good as they are, if not a notch better. So often I've seen people in their desire to be good people and kind to the less fortunate, they end up spending so much time and effort on people who have such a deep constellation of problems, they don't solve anything and they bring themselves down. So I actually encourage you to be elitist in terms of who you spend time with. And of course, your romantic partners, without saying. It goes well, it deserves saying, because how many people have a rescuer fantasy and they're going to get involved with somebody because they're going to try to turn that bad boy into, or turn him around, or that bad woman, or whatever you want to call her, or whatever you want to call her today, rescuer. But in the end, not only is it unlikely to work, even psychotherapists have a hard time changing people after years, but very often you develop there's a bite the hand that feeds you syndrome. So the kinder you are, often the more they take you for granted, or maybe even exact some kind of a perverse retribution. And as well with charity. The standard conventional wisdom is you give to the least among us, you give to the most destitute, to that poor little animal in the cage they show on the commercial. Donate to the ASPCA now. But really, it's much wiser if you really care to make a difference. The wisest charity you can give is not to those with the greatest need, but as every battlefield medic knows, to use your limited resources to help those with the greatest potential to profit. And for one example, which I've used a lot in the past, but it's pretty germane, programs in the public schools for intellectually gifted kids have been eviscerated. And rich parents can afford to supplement for their kids, but the very poor do have such a constellation of problems that it's very difficult for your dollars or your time to make that much difference. But there's this middle group of working class blue collar kids, some of whom are really quite intellectually gifted, whom your time and your money could make a big difference, could enable them, if not to out and out cure cancer or develop the next iPhone or whatever, next Google, but to make a bigger difference in the world than they otherwise would have. So I'm even encouraging you to be elitist in terms of your charity. My next preachy plea is against materialism. It's not like I'm some wild lefty. I'm very conservative on some issues, like the efficacy of social uplift programs, which my PhD from Berkeley is in that field, and it's really disappointing how ineffective those programs tend to be, even the vaunted Head Start. But what I'm encouraging you to do is going to sound like a lefty. I really encourage you to realize that beyond a bare middle class income, buying stuff is not likely to make you happier. 3,000 square feet in a nice neighborhood versus 800 square feet in a barely, not a war zone, but a marginally safe neighborhood will save you a fortune, allow you a lot of freedom to choose the career you want, and really won't hurt your quality of life a whole lot. Same is true of smaller purchases. Instead of that new Beamer or Mercedes or Jaguar or whatever, a 15-year-old Toyota Corolla or whatever still has usually quite a lot of life left in it, and it will cost you, instead of $40,000, $50,000, or $80,000, would cost you $2,000 or $3,000. And over a lifetime, that can add up to hundreds of thousands of dollars, which again gives you the freedom to do the kind of work that you would find rewarding and maybe make the biggest contribution to the world, rather than be so money-driven in your choice of careers. That's also, of course, every purchase from diamond versus cubic zirconium versus staying at the Ritz-Carlton versus staying at a small pension or a hostel or Motel 6, even, heaven forbid, can make all the difference. $50 wine versus $3 chuck. When Consumer Reports finds a $3 chuck is better than many more expensive wines. I can give a million examples. The Facanable shirt, which costs $150, is absurd. and this may seem extreme, but if you go to a thrift store or to Walmart or Target and get a shirt for $5, $10, $20, and just keep it, well ironed and clean, and as long as it's in good taste, and plenty of bleach, cheap shirts and things can be in good taste, you can save a fortune over your lifetime. It's a mindset. And what people don't realize is that by not spending, you actually buy more freedom. You're not needing to work on some job you hate, and that's where you're going to spend most of your hours anyway. The final preachy plea is going to be probably the preachiest of all, especially in this era in which we're hurtling headlong to legalizing marijuana nationwide. I did a review of the literature on marijuana for Time magazine, and unlike the big tobacco-sponsored legalization efforts, the really fair-minded research, including a meta-evaluation by the National Academy of Sciences that came out last year, that reviewed 200 solid studies and found really frightening dangers. This is not reefer madness, right-wing stuff. This really is a problem in terms of not just memory, motivation, but even increased social anxiety, depression, and even psychosis. And what people don't realize, even if you're vaping, increased cardiovascular and cancer risk. And we've also seen in car accidents in the states that have legalized, Colorado and Washington, there's been a significant increase in car accidents, children going to the emergency room from overdoses, because just like with alcohol, they get into their parents' stash. So in the ultimate of preachy pleas, you can probably find greater pleasures in things other than getting high. Whether it be writing or painting or getting together with friends or sports or getting involved in community theater, whether it's on stage or behind, playing music, whether it be hip hop or classical or anything in between. Please, 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 don't do drugs. Anyway, those are some preachy pleas. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you watched this long, I appreciate it. And oh, by the way, these come not completely, but largely come from my new book, Careers for Dummies. And thank you again for watching. I'm Marty Nemko.